CTV News Royal commentator Richard Berthelsen. Richard, this clearly, and as you mentioned there, she went back to the first time that her first broadcast, as you were talking about, that pivotal moment in 1940 when, as she herself, the Queen, as a young child, addressing other children being separated, and that connection she made with what we're seeing today.
Yeah, the Queen, clearly in a very subtle but direct way, linking back to that great moment of uncertainty of what was to come. I mean, we all know the story now, what ended up with the victory in 1945. But at the time, 1940 was extremely bleak days throughout the United Kingdom and Commonwealth, particularly for children who were being sent away. And she reminded us of that, a great address that she made with her sister, and her sister joining in at the end. I was also struck, as you were, Angie, that she deliberately ended her comments with that great phrase from World War II and the Vera Lynn song, "We Will Meet Again." She also, as we expected, really focused on care workers, the NHS, of course, the health service in the United Kingdom. She referred to the health system. She talked about people helping the vulnerable. She talked about the importance of people considering their actions now. And what they do now has such a central role in terms of how this works out for everybody, and that every one of us has a role to play, an extremely important part of her statement there. She talked about people coming together and the importance of people who are self-isolating playing the role that they are as well. And she, made it clear we are going to be facing some challenges in the times ahead. But it was a hopeful ending when she said, "We will succeed at this. It is a victory that will belong to us all," she said. "We will have more to endure, but we will succeed." I thought that was extremely well said. Again, the Queen herself, is not one for effusive speeches, not one for dramatic turns of phrase. But these statements today, I think, will particularly have resonance with older people who may remember or may understand the deprivations of the Second World War, and those, that have followed that kind of thing. But at the same time, it's a message to all of us.
It's a message to all of us. The Queen talking about that national spirit, and I'm paraphrasing here, Richard, "We remain united and resolute. We will overcome it." And I thought it was quite beautiful when she talked about that national spirit, the Queen talking about that national spirit and saying part of that we're seeing with the rainbows that are drawn by children, talking about the youth around the world and their importance in all of this.
Yeah, I mean, the Queen is really directly engaging and challenging everyone. I mean, obviously, we know some of these phrases will have resonance with older people, but she is really engaging people in all aspects of society in their role in this particular pandemic. It's not just old people, but she did refer to children. She referred to people self-isolating. She referred to care workers in hospitals and those providing emergency services. So it's trying to broaden as much as possible the reach. She raised, that this kind of activities were happening without the Commonwealth. Of course, she's centrally situated in the United Kingdom, which is facing the pandemic on a more dramatic scale at the moment. But, the message here is really throughout, the broader community, and it applies no less to those of us in Canada in terms of all of us playing our role in defeating this pandemic.
However, how unprecedented it is to hear from the Queen during this time, Richard, as we move forward with this pandemic, continue to study it. Researchers are working day and night trying to find a vaccine and treatment, et cetera. Could it be possible we could be hearing from the Queen again at some point as we continue to move through what we don't know is the end to a health crisis around the world? Well,
I mean, as we both know, Angie, this is taking unprecedented steps. We don't know from one day to next what is going to be changed about our life or how we're approaching it or things that we had thought. So I think it's entirely possible we'll hear from the Queen again. As I said in an earlier piece, I think that this today is really the end of the beginning. It's by no means the end. And I certainly think we will hear from her if we get to a point where normal life is, and there can be some victory declared in terms of vaccine or some kind of other public health measures. I think we'll hear from her again. And I think should the situation take some other turns in terms of seriousness or graveness of issue, it's entirely possible the Queen may choose to speak again, because I think she will recognize that her comments today people were very much looking for it. There was starting to be a lot of question about when we were going to hear from the Queen, because we had only really had a release statement on the 19th of March. And the people do want to see her. They want to know that she's fine and that she's still at her desk performing her constitutional functions, which is her key role right now, is in the continuity of government, the sense of rule of law we have, the Queen continuing to play those roles, just as her Governor General and Lieutenant Governors are doing here in Canada as well.
That's right. Richard, I'm going to throw a quick clip of the Queen's speech. I'll give you the last word on that. Let's get our viewers to take a listen to this.
Around the world, we have seen heartwarming stories of people coming together to help others, be it through delivering food parcels and medicines, checking on neighbours, or converting businesses to help the relief effort. And though self-isolating may at times be hard, many people of all faiths and of none are discovering that it presents an opportunity to slow down, pause and reflect in prayer or meditation.
Richard, you heard the Queen there. Time to slow down and reflect on, I guess, on our lives and where we stand right here. Your thoughts. We'll give you the last word on this here.
I think the Queen here is really trying to find any silver lining in the situation that we're in right now. I think she herself, has been reunited with Prince Philip. They're often apart now because he's not undertaking public engagements. They're together at Windsor Castle. I think that is a bit of a silver lining for the Queen herself. But I mean, in that clip, we heard her very, very much talk about the various activities we know are going on every single day in Canada in terms of people helping their neighbor, people helping with food, medicines, and others. Everyone here can think of examples in their life, but she really is, giving us that one moment to think, is there any way we can look at this in a slightly brighter way, and that we've taken time to reconnect with people. So many people I know have reconnected and been much more evident on the telephone, having voice conversations. I think that's what the Queen is directing. And again, she herself is experiencing that to a degree. And I think, again, a little bit of positive in what is an otherwise, at this point in time, a fairly bleak environment in terms as we look out to the crisis.
That important moment, that important time for us to all reflect. CTV News Royal commentator Richard Berthelsen, thank you for this, Richard. Always appreciate your time here on CTV News Channel. You and your family stay safe.
Thanks, Angie. You too.